In this video tutorial we're going to revise carbohydrates. Okay, so if we look at the word carbohydrates, it basically can split it up into two parts. So hydrated, so that means contains water. So we've got hydrogen and oxygen there, and we've got carbon. Okay, so C. So carbohydrates only contain the atoms carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. So if we look at the monomers of the carbohydrates, these are called the monosaccharides, and these are the simple sugars. And the good example of a monosaccharide is glucose. Okay, we can draw glucose in shorthand by just showing that it's a hexose sugar. Okay, so if we're going to label that up, that's actually an oxygen there. So we've got carbon 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. And the full formula for glucose is C6H12O6, but we haven't drawn all of the hydrogens and oxygens on there. The ones it's important for us to know are the ones on carbon 1 and carbon 4. Okay, so on carbon 1, if we have the hydrogen above the OH group, hydrogen above, that's alpha glucose, and you can remember that because above and alpha start with an A. If we were to draw it the other way round, so on carbon 1, we draw another glucose. Okay, if this time on carbon 1 we have the hydrogen below the OH group, then that is beta glucose. And again, really easy to remember, hydrogen below carbon 1, and that is beta glucose, and beta and below both start with a B. So if we have to look at how we join monosaccharides together, if we look at joining two alpha glucoses, okay, so here's glucose, hydrogen above, that makes it an alpha glucose. Okay, draw them on carbon 4 as well. And there's our extra. Okay, so again, hydrogen, hydroxyl, and carbon 1, hydrogen above. So we've got two lots of alpha glucose. If we join them together, we're going to show a condensation reaction. So we're going to find the water. So here we go, H2O. So we get the release of water. That's one of the things that has to happen in a condensation reaction. Another thing is that you have to put two small things together to make a large thing. So again, if we draw out what we've done there, we've got now two glucoses, we've still got that hydrogen, and we've still got that hydrogen. Okay, but what we've got now is, if you can see here, that oxygen in the middle of that bond. And that is characteristic of a bond in carbohydrates, and the name of the bond is a glycosidic bond. Okay. We've also made a large molecule, and in this case we've made a disaccharide, which is putting two sugar units together, and specifically here, because we've put two alpha glucose together, we've made maltose. Okay. There are some polysaccharides that you need to learn about, so polymers. Okay, so there's three that you need to know about. We've got starch and glycogen, which are both used for energy storage. Starch in plants and glycogen in animals, it's found in the liver. And then we've got cellulose, which is a structural carbohydrate found in plant cell walls. Okay. Now, if we go back to have a look at the structure of our disaccharide here, we'll see that our glycosidic bond is between carbon 1 on that glucose and carbon 4 here. So we can call it a 1,4 glycosidic bond, and because these are both alpha glucose, we can call it an alpha 1,4 glycosidic bond. Okay? That bond is characteristic of the amylose, which is found in starch. So there are lots of 1,4 glycosidic bonds. alpha 1,4 glycosidic bonds, because starch is made up of lots and lots of alpha glucose. Okay, there's another part of starch which is called amylopectin. Amylopectin is also made up of alpha 1,4 glycosidic bonds, but it has a much more branched structure than the coil, that is amylose. Okay, amylopectin is very, very branched, and the reason that it has those branches is because it also has alpha 1,6 glycosidic bonds. Okay, alpha 1,6 glycosidic bond, if we try and show what that is, again, if we draw out our glucose here, we've got carbon 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So a 1,4 bond will give us a chain. Okay, so if we to show that, that would give us a chain. But if we have a 1,6 bond, okay, then that's going to give us a branch. So again, if we try and show it here, if this is carbon 1, we could then have a branch down to carbon 6. Amylopectin also has a branch structure in the same way that glycogen has a branch structure. So again, if we were going to draw glycogen, we've got lots of glucose units that have 1,4 glycosidic bonds, so we get a straight chain. But then what we also have the 1,6 bonds. So again, we've got this structure as well. And eventually, more and more of these 1,6 bonds, we get a branching structure in glycogen. Okay. With cellulose, cellulose is found in plant cell walls. Unlike starch and glycogen, it's made of beta glucose. Starch and glycogen are made of alpha glucose. Okay, so if we're going to look at beta glucose, if we remember, okay, we draw out our glucose. This time on carbon 1, the hydrogen is below. Now, in order to form a glycosidic bond with beta glucose, if you think about it, if we had a normal glucose next to it, we'd have a hydrogen there and an OH there. And if we remove that water, that wouldn't leave us the characteristic glycosidic bond with oxygen in between. So we can't do that. So what we have to do is, with every other beta glucose, we have to turn it upside down. Okay, so with this beta glucose, we turn it upside down. So there we go. And this time we have the two OHs together. So this time we can lose H2O, and therefore we can have the condensation reaction. So beta glucose will always look a little bit different in cellulose because each beta glucose will be rotated by 180 degrees C. So if that's one's at a normal rotation, we've had to flip the next one over in order to make a glycosidic bond. What that means is that cellulose has lots of straight chains of beta glucose, and also these straight chains will join together like that by a hydrogen bonds, because of course we've got all these hydrogens and oxygens. So cellulose has a property, it's a structural carbohydrate found in plant cell walls. It enables the plant cell walls to be rigid, it prevents bursting, and that obviously is down to the fact that it has these beta glucose units in there. Okay, what you now need to do is you now need to have a look at some questions on carbohydrates and see if you can answer them using this information.